everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Wintuition MTG. My name's Wyatt, and today we've got something a little different for you. It's been a while since we've done one, but we've got an in-depth deck tech for you. Now, this isn't for CEDH, but for high-power casual specifically, but it's with the new unbanned Braids Cabal Minion. Before that, though, I'd like to take one moment and thank our sponsor today, TOA Magic. If you would like to support us and them while saving, you can visit their website, toamagic.com. to view their selection of over 100,000 different singles, all with high-quality scans. They offer 2-day free tracked shipping on all orders, and they've got everything in their store from sealed product all the way to Power 9. You can use our code WINTUITION at checkout to get 5% off your entire order. Once again, that's code WINTUITION at toamagic.com. Eternal lives here. And, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the deck tech.
Alright, before we go ahead and get into today's deck tech, I do want to preface this by saying that when I built this deck, I built it with two things in mind. One, that my playgroup would be okay with no holds barred, and it would be okay for me to proxy things that I might not own, as well as that people would be okay playing against full stacks. So when you potentially consider building this deck for yourself, that might want to be something you keep in mind, and I'll go over those individual cards as we get to them. But you might want to make slight adjustments based off of the expectations of your individual play group. And outside of that, towards the end of the video, if you're not comfortable with proxies, I'm going to suggest a couple other budget alternatives to some of the more expensive cards that won't really detract from the theme at all. So, as you could see from the video of today's title, though, we are looking at Braids Cabal Minion today. She just recently got unbanned, and she says at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices an artifact, creature, or land. So when we built this deck, we leaned really heavy into the stacks and resource denial mindset. We tried to get down an early stacks piece as soon as we can and try to follow that up with something that's going to allow us to break parity, whether it's going to be something like a Bitter Blossom, a creature that makes tokens like Jadar, or something like the One Ring that's just going to let us continue to get multiple spells to cast every turn. So let's go ahead and get into the creatures here. Starting off, we're playing the new copy of Braids as well. This is just an additional draw outlet on top of a incidental sack effect. You don't always have to trigger it, but it's good if you can. We're following that up with Crypt Gas. This is just good for doubling our mana. We've got Dolphy, who's just generically going to be good, especially if we're forcing our opponents to sacrifice things to go underneath of the Dolphy. We have a Gisa for kind of the same reasoning. If an opponent has to sacrifice a creature to Braids or any of our other effects, we get to steal it from them right away, which is just great. We're playing Gray Merchant for some life gain, because we're going to be using our life as a resource pretty heavily in this deck, and it can also just function as a win con later in the game. We've got Jadar. He's just being played as another Bitter Blossom effect to allow us to break parity with the Braids trigger. Similar to Gary, we've got Kakusho. It's just in there for some great life gain, as well as potentially a way to close out the game later on. We've got Crick, kind of as a value engine and incidental life gain. He can help us power out some of our more expensive spells early, or even potentially just land like a turn 2 or turn 3 like Shieldred or Volgavoth, for example. Following that up, we've got some more card draw in Morbid Opportunist. I went with this card because it triggers on everyone's creatures, not just yours, so you could potentially be drawing 4 cards a cycle, which is pretty solid. We've got Opposition Agent, which obviously is just a very generically powerful effect, even if you aren't stealing a tutor from somebody and just play it as a Sorcery Speed Stranglehold, can still be very powerful. We've got Orcish Bowmasters to help deny people draws against us. We're playing Pitiless Plunderer as well, just for some incidental treasure generation. And normally you're playing this card for combo reasons, like you're making infinite treasures with it. But I think I'm kind of iffy on it still. At the moment, it's in the list where if something of ours incidentally dies, or like if we have to sack a creature, theoretically then we get a treasure, which then we can sack the Braids. So it just gives us a little more longevity before we have to continue to eat our stuff. And to incidentally give us like a random treasure here or there as things die. But once again, I'm not 100% on if I'm going to keep him in the list. He's kind of a test card at the moment. We're following that up with a Roaming Throne. Now, we have 2 main creature types we want to be naming in our deck with this. Let's go ahead and double check here. I believe it's, 7 humans and 5 Phyrexians. The upside to naming humans is we get to hit things like Braids, not the new Braids though. We get Gisa, which you can still make 2 of the decay. I was thinking of Jadar, which you do get 2 decades. Double Gisa triggers doesn't actually help you there. You get double Morbid Opportunist triggers as well, right? I believe. Oh no, because it triggers an additional time. I don't believe that actually works with Morbid Opportunist. I could be incorrect about that. I know copying those effects does work though. We've got it with Pitiless Plunder, which isn't the worst. We have it with Ruthless Technomancer, which isn't the worst. You could sack 2 things. But those are all our humans. Realistically, though, I think naming Phyrexian is just much better for us. Both of the Shieldred abilities are triggered. This Shieldred has a triggered ability. This Shieldred's a triggered ability. We've got Wormcoil Engine with a nominal death trigger. So personally, I think naming Phyrexians is usually going to be better. Oh, I guess it incidentally goes with Crick, too. We get double counters there, which isn't bad. Following that up, like I said, we've got Ruthless Technomancer. It's mainly just in there to sack a big creature for treasure if we just need like a burst of things to sacrifice. Or incidentally, in a really long game, we can potentially use it to return some of our cheaper value engine creatures to the battlefield using its secondary ability, because we are an artifact pile at its core. I think we're playing 22 it's total artifact count. 23. We're playing 23 artifacts. Then after that, we're playing all 3 Shieldreds. Obviously, they're just amazing. All of them are really, really good. If you land any of them, it's probably... Well, if you land either of these 2, it's going to be really hard for your opponents to get out from under Braids, whereas this one's just kind of like some good life gain value. Similar to Gisa, we've got a Turgid in our list, just so we can steal things from our opponents or whenever they have to discard to any of our discard outlets. Similar to Pitiless Plunder, Volgavoth is in the list, but I'm not actually 100% on it, because we are actually on Bolas' Citadel, so I don't want to play too many cards that are 5 or more mana if I don't have to, and we've already got several of them, I think 7 or 8, and this is our most expensive card on the list. While Volgavoth is extremely good as a flying lifelink 9/9, we don't have a ton of ways to reliably, ramp to get him out until probably turn 5 or 6 at the earliest. And if we're doing that, we probably aren't advancing the Stax plan, so that I don't know. He seems good, but our main ways of getting him out are going to be things like Necromancy and Animate Dead in our enchantment slot. I don't know. I'm still kind of iffy on him. We'll have to see. I might change that later. But then in our last creature slot, we're playing Wormcoil Engine. This card obviously is just really good. Feeds into several other things that we can sacrifice off if needed. It's got Deathless to Lifelink. You know what? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I might replace Volgavoth with Wormcoil Larva, the new Wormcoil Engine, and just run 2 of them, essentially, if I'm not feeling the Volgavoth in the list. Moving on, we've got our Sorceries. Now, most of these are just pretty generically powerful cards, but I still think it's worth playing them all for different reasons. Starting off, we've got Beacon of Unrest. This is probably one that you're going to be 5 mana for a Reanimate at first, and it's going to seem kind of slow, but the main reason we're playing this is so that when we aggressively tutor for the One Ring, and we want to sacrifice it to Braids because it's at 4 or 5 bird encounters and we don't want to keep doming ourselves, if we have the ability to tutor up Beacon of Unrest, we can reanimate our One Ring from the graveyard back into play, and then if we can keep going and getting Beacon, we can theoretically throughout a game use our One Ring 2 to 3 times if needed. So, similar to Volgavoth and Pitiless Plunder, this card might not stay in the final list, but it seems decent as a long game option at the moment, and incidentally, it can reanimate other giant things, including your opponent's stuff. Following that up, we have Beseech the Mirror. If I were to cut down on tutors, this might be the first tutor I cut, just because we don't have, outside of artifacts, a crazy amount of ways to trigger the bargain, but because I really wanted to up the consistency of this deck and your ability to get One Ring to break resource parity, we're playing as many tutors as we can, especially Beseech, where we can potentially put it right into play. We're playing Breach the Multiverse. This just serves functionally as a giant bomb or win con, but this also might get cut as it might be a little too greedy of mana, or a little too greedy mana cost wise in the overall list. Although obviously it's just a phenomenal card. Then we've just got Demonic Tutor and Imperial Seal. Okay, following that up, we have Invoke Despair. Now, this is 5 mana for only target opponent. However, I feel like because black doesn't have a lot of ways to make people get rid of enchantments or planeswalkers, and those are two of the permanent types that our deck isn't going to be aggressively trying to Stax out, I think it's worth including in case someone's able to like land something that can get out from under your chokehold on the game, like a 6 mana Elspeth, for example. This would be a great answer because that would be a planeswalker that could single-handedly outpace most of our Stax pieces. And we just don't have a ton of enchantment removal. Following that up, we have probably one of my favorite black cards literally of all time. It's just Pucks. Each player loses a third of their life, discards a third of the cards in their hand, sacrifices a third of the creatures they control, and sacrifices a third of the lands they control. Round up each time. Ideally, we want to be playing this probably like turns 4 or 5, where like people are just barely starting to kind of get their footing after we've slowed them down or impeded them, and then we just kind of like cut their legs off right at the knees, so to speak. Like, we just want to come in and brutally punish them. I'm a massive fan of this card. It's going to hurt you too, but you don't, ideally when you're playing it after you've gotten some kind of card advantage for yourself to refill the resources that you'll be losing. After that, we've got Praetor's Grasp. I'm just generically a really big fan of this card. It functionally can serve as a bribery in black. We do have a incidentally decent amount of ways to make mana of any color through treasures and artifacts. Not a crazy amount, but enough where this card is worth playing. You probably aren't going to be able to get hyper greedy like triple or quad pip cards, but you can probably get away with like stealing 1 to 3 pip cards. Or 1 to 2 pip cards, sorry. But I'm still personally just a big fan of this card. Then we've got Reanimate, just as a way to get things back, either of our own or stuff that other people have sacrificed. And then we're playing a value Yawgmoth's Will. Now, most decks that would be playing Yawgmoth's will be playing it for combo reasons. And while there's technically only one combo in our deck, I still think it's worth playing the Yawgmoth's Will purely for value. As you can see, incidentally, we are on Dark Writ and Cabal Ritual, which can both be really good when comboed with the Yawgmoth's Will, along with any of our mana acceleration artifacts, like any of our fast mana or anything that we end up sacrificing off to Braids. We can then reanimate with the Yawgmoth's Will. It can just allow for a big explosive turn, but I understand if people aren't a fan of this card because it is kind of slow. You have to have a yard first, and we don't have a way to fill our yard because we're in mono black. Moving on, though, we're going to go ahead and check out the instance. We've got Cabal Writ and Dark Writ, just great acceleration. They're going to potentially allow us to slam an early Braids or big scary artifact turn 1 or 2. Following that up, we've got a Deadly Dispute, just some incidental card draw in case something gets killed, and it can make a treasure. We've got an Entomb to go with our 4 reanimate effects. We're running a Malakir Rebirth just as a land slot because I like personally being a little lean on lands, so I try to include like 1 or 2 MDSCs to help even that out, and incidentally this can help protect some of our big creatures. We're playing a Sudden Spoiling just because I feel like a lot of strategies do just kind of get blown out by this card. It's solid overall, and at 3 mana in casual, I think this is going to stop a lot of people's win attempts. Then we're also just on Vamp Tutor. Now, moving on down to the artifacts, I kind of built this deck trying to be artifact-centric themed, and I haven't gotten to the lands yet, but when I do get to the lands, I can show you. But for example, we're playing a Mishra's Workshop because we really want to be cheating out like some of these artifacts quickly. So starting us off here, we have an Aetherflux Reservoir. Now, I will admit, this card doesn't really do anything in the deck at all, outside of, unless we have Bolas's Citadel and Sensei's Divining Top. Now, you can use this card for incidental life gain, but you're not really in a deck where you're going to be like 3 or 4 spelling every turn. You're maybe going to be playing 1 to 2 critical spells, and because you're going to have to make like a lot of micro decisions on when to apply the pressure versus when to relieve the pressure of the stacks. So this is really just in here as a combo piece. You could cut this if you don't want to run any combo lines and just add in some kind of value artifact. After that, though, we've got Arcane Signet. Then we've got Bolas's Citadel. Now we do have... Hold on, let me check here. Sort by mana value. In our... Oh, hold on, I gotta sort them by... There we go. Sorry. So if you look at our deck here, we're running 5 5-mana cards, 3 6-mana, 3 7-mana, and 1 9-mana. So that's 6, 11, 12 things that are over 4 mana. That's not the best for Bolas's Citadel, so that's kind of what I was talking about before, where like some of these cards that are more expensive might end up getting the cut, like potentially a Volgavoth. I feel like I'd keep Breach before I cut the Volgavoth, so it might be like the Volgavoth is first to go. But overall, I still feel like because Breach can hit the rest of our deck pretty efficiently, including down to like we've got a pretty good spread of 1 to 4 mana cards, I feel like it's worth including, personally. And I'm just a massive fan of it. You can potentially end the game with it at the end by using the bottom ability to sack 10 things. I just love the card. It was one of the artifacts that I wanted to build the deck around when I had the Mishra's Workshop in mind. Following that, we have a Chrome Mox. Then we have a Crucible of Worlds, and I'll talk about some of the combos with this when we get into the lands. The Crucible is going to be really good, obviously, because you can loot the same land to your Braids trigger, but we also have several with ETBs or good effects that we want to keep reusing as well. Then we're playing a Felwar Stone. This is just a 2-mana rock that also goes with our Praetor's Grasp to help us cast their things. We're playing an Ichor Wellspring. This is incidentally just going to be card draw that we can feed to our Braids. I feel like it was worth including like 1 or 2 of these effects. I was originally also on Prized Statue, which says ETB make a treasure, die make a treasure, but I ended up only running the Ichor Wellspring because I feel like I don't want to have too many quote-unquote dead cards that only are there for the Braids, because if Braids isn't there, these cards don't do anything. But I felt like the Ichor was still worth playing. We have a Jet Medallion, just good ramp. Lotus Petal, Mana Vault, Mox Diamond, Mox Opal. Theoretically, if you're playing on a budget, you could probably cut the Mana Vault, Mox Diamond, and Mox Opal, but you could probably still run the Lotus Petal. After that, we've got Sensei's The Binding Top. This card, even without the Aetherflux Reservoir and Bolas's Citadel, I would still consider playing because it's 1 mana card filtering. It's just good when there's not a ton of card filtering you can play in mono black that isn't like a once a turn type thing, like Dark Confidant or what's the card, Phyrexian Arena, but I ended up not going with those things because I don't want to play. I feel like they're a little too slow for the deck and only doing like 1 potential card a turn, which is crazy because those cards aren't even bad. I just feel like we're in a state in Magic where they're a little too slow for the truly degenerate piles. Following that up, though, we've got Smokestack. This is going to hurt you too, obviously. However, you can play, if you have your Braids out and resolve Smokestack, and usually I wouldn't play a Smokestack before Braids, you can sack it on the turn where you're finally tired of it. Now, granted, your opponents will also be lifted from their sanctions that turn, so to speak. But I think it's worth playing because if you can time this well, you can leverage this plus the Braids to just kind of end the game right there, because you could fully deny your opponents of everything they have, and you might just win on the spot. Now, if you're personally not a fan of this card because you feel like it's punishing you too much, or you just don't like playing with it, feel free to cut it though, although I personally love Smokestack. Obviously, we're just running Soul Ring, cards fire. We're playing Static Orb. We were originally on more orbs, like I was also running Winter Orb, Winter Moon, Trinisphere. I did end up cutting some of them because we don't, I think, want to lean fully into that Stax package, as we have enough Stax abilities from our commander and other effects that we don't want to hinder our own untapping ability. Granted, I still did play 2 of them, and in my opinion, the 2 that fit the deck the best are Static Orb and Torpor Orb. Now, with Static Orb, this is kind of a nombo in our deck because it slows us down too, but it's kind of the same argument as Smokestack. If you can time this right and land it after you've put down like a piece of card advantage or something, then your opponents probably aren't going to be able to get out from under that, that advantage you're pressing on them, and you will be able to break the parity of this pretty easily, I feel. It just comes down to not jamming this right away and kind of waiting for your moment. And that's kind of the key thing with a lot of the Stax pieces in this deck. Outside of the commander herself, you kind of want to wait till it's good for you to play it, in the sense that it's not going to hurt you as much as it hurts them. Then following that, we've got Tanglewire. This card is also just really solid, and if you want to sacrifice it early to Braids, you can, so you can stop dealing with it. You can also, because this is Yes, also an upkeep trigger. If you don't want to deal with the Tangle Wire that turn, you could stack your triggers where you resolve your Braids, then your Tangle Wire. And because your Tangle Wire is no longer in play, due to sacking it to Braids, there's no counters and you won't have to tap anything. But it's still really good for the ability to just slow your opponents down and potentially combined with Braids or another Stax piece, just cut them out of the game entirely. Following that, we have the literal main engine of the deck, the One Ring. Personally, I think the best way for this deck to maintain its card advantage and keep pressuring your opponents is going to be aggressively tutoring for the One Ring as often as possible. There aren't any other cards in your deck that are going to be able to draw cards as efficiently while also potentially forcing your opponents to use removal on them versus your actual Stax pieces, which is another upside of the One Ring. Like if your opponents want to deal with that, then they aren't using like their exile spell on something else. But because we're going to be losing our own resources a lot to some of our Stax pieces, we really need to make sure that we are breaking that parity. And once again, the best way to do that is just to constantly have a full hand, and the best way to do that is just going to be through the One Ring. Now, there is some incidental other card draw and value engines in the deck. You don't always have to go for One Ring right away first time. Sometimes there will be situations where it's going to be better to get like a Stax piece or some other specific card. Obviously, there's no one right answer for everything, but for the most part, I think this is just going to, as most decks, be your main engine. Then following that up, we've got Torpor Orb. This is kind of a nombo as some of our creatures, but if we play it, it can just be really, really good against a lot of casual strategies because in casual Commander at least, most big bombs or big flashy creatures are going to have ETBs. They're going to be doing something crazy. And I feel like just turning that off is going to be solid. Then lastly, we have Wishclaw Talisman. Now, the reason we're playing Wishclaw on top of having every other tutor is purely because we're playing Opposition Agent. So Wishclaw Talisman serves as kind of a gotcha card where we're going to play it and we'll pass and we won't activate it until we have at least 4 mana available so that we can use 1 to send it off to an opponent, get the Opposition Agent, and then wait for them to activate it. Now, this trick's only going to work probably once or twice on your playgroup, and you can get away with it more in like pickup games. But once your playgroup kind of knows that's your plan every time, after you do this a couple times, they'll probably start assuming you get Opposition Agent every time, and you can actually just use the Wishclaw on other things because they'll probably just end up like playing around it, thinking that's what you did anyway. Which, once again, if you feel like you don't want to do that to your friends or that doesn't fit your group's playstyle, feel free to cut it. But personally, I kind of like the line, so I ended up going with it. Moving into our enchantments here, we have Animate Dead. Obviously, just a good card. Get any of our value creatures back, steal something from their yard, anything of the sort. We've got both Bitter Blossom and Dreadhorde Invasion, which can help us break the parity of the Braids sacrifice effects. We're running a Black Market Connections actually for the same reason. We can make some treasures which we can sack or tokens which we can sack the Braids while also drawing cards. This card's just really good. We're playing a Contamination because if we can get any of our Bitter Blossom effects or just 2, 3, maybe even 4 creatures out in play and we land a Contamination, this oftentimes will be enough to just fully take your opponents out of the game as well and could be considered another alternate win con. We're playing a Meat Hook Massacre 2 as well as the Meat Hook Massacre 1. The reason I'm playing both of them is because I wanted to run 2 board wipes in the deck, and incidentally, the Meat Hook Massacre 2 can potentially reanimate your things and steal their things, which is really, really good, even though it's mana expensive. And I'm just playing the Meat Hook Massacre purely because I wanted some more incidental life gain in the deck because we have a lot of engines that are going to eat away our lives. And then our last enchantment is going to be Necromancy. Similar to Animate Dead, we're just using this for some value and for the ability to steal things from other yards. Now, moving on lastly into the lands, we're going to start off with the land that I quote-unquote built around. It is Mishra's Workshop. Now, this card's insanely expensive to the point where if you don't already have one, you should not buy one for the deck. Unless you just shouldn't buy one. They're so crazy expensive and they have so few use cases that they're more of a collector's piece. So if you're okay with proxying, I'd recommend that. If you're not okay with proxying, you can cut it. It's not the end of the world. Personally, though, I think the card's super fun, and whenever I have the chance to put it in a list, I will if I can. Starting off, though, we have Ancient Tomb. This is just good mana acceleration, even though it does some damage to us. We're playing a Barad Dur. We're using this specifically for the XX black ability at the bottom, where for 3 mana, we can make one creature a turn to sack the Braids to sack the Braids if we need to, which can just let us kind of choke our opponents out of the game if we can make stuff each turn and they can't. Then we're playing 4 fetches. The only reason we're playing the fetches of Bloodstained Mire, Marsh Flats, Polluted Delta, and Verdant Catacombs is for Witch's Cottage. All of them can tutor up Witch's Cottage, and when it enters the battlefield untapped, if we have 3 or more other swamps, we can put a creature from our grave on top of our deck. This is also one of the lands that's really good to loop with our Crucible of Worlds as well. Same thing for Bojuka Bog, another great land to loop with Crucible of Worlds if you just want to keep exiling people's yards over and over. We've got Cabal Coffers, which combined with Urborg is just good. However, I know it's crazy, but I might cut this card unless I add in like 1 or 2 more effects to tutor up lands, just because it feels bad to use like a hard, like a quote-unquote demonic tutor or something to go get this and the Urborg, but it obviously is still a very powerful card. I just might try to find like a slot in the list somewhere for like an expedition map, for example, especially because we're on tons of other value lands. We've got a Field of the Dead, which can just break parity on us having things to sacrifice to all our effects. And because of Field of the Dead, we end up playing half snow-covered, half normal swamps. Although, theoretically, there's still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 18 different lands if you were to only play one type of basic, which is still probably fine for the Field of the Dead count, but I just wanted to do half and half to be safe. I'm playing a Gemstone Cavern just because I'm a fan of this card. It can start it can start the game with it in play. It's really good. We're playing Lake of the Dead. You have to lose a swamp when this comes into play, but being able to sack a swamp for 4 mana incidentally later in the game is really, really powerful, especially when we have things like Crucible of Worlds. Or you can sack off things like the Workshop. If you don't have any artifacts in hand, you could sack the fetches. There's a lot of good... Well, sorry, you actually can't do those specifically because they have to be swamps, so you would need Urborg, so that was a bad example. But I think it's still worth playing a Lake of the Dead because it's just very powerful. We're on a Nykthos, where, similar to Cabal Coffers, this card can feel a little bad if you don't have the quote-unquote payoff for it, but it's still worth including, in my opinion, just because it can be very explosive and very powerful. Then we've got the basics, like I covered before. We're on an Urborg, just to make everything swamps. We're playing an Urza's Saga. The main reason we're doing this is because we have a lot of fast mana that we can get with the 3rd ability, which is really good, but the 2nd ability also can potentially make a creature to sack the Braids as well, which can just help us break parity. And then theoretically, as for tutor targets, we have Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal, Mana Vault, Mox Diamond, Mox Opal, Sensei's Top, Soul Ring. It appears to just be those. I don't believe there's any creature artifacts. Yeah. At least not cheap enough ones. But all of those are still really good hits off of Urza's Saga. Then we also have a Volrath Stronghold as well. This card's a little expensive because it's on the reserve list, but this is just a land not a lot of people have heard of that lets you put things from your grave back on top. Just really good generically as well. Overall, that's pretty much the entire list. I mentioned it towards the beginning. If you're looking to play on a budget or want to make this like maybe a little bit friendlier, you could probably cut out some of the more expensive just fast mana or consistency pieces. Like you could probably reduce the tutor count by like 2 or 3. You could probably take out the Yawgmoth's Will. You could probably as well take out the Mana Vault, Mox Diamond, Mox Opal. You could remove the One Ring. Well, I would avoid removing the One Ring unless you really have to, purely because this is going to be your main value engine in the deck. Yeah, but if you're looking to just cheapen the deck a bit, like I said, you could cut the fast mana pieces. You probably don't have to worry about anything in the enchantments being too oppressive outside of potentially contamination. You could cut that for like fun reasons if you wanted, but personally my playgroup's all about the spiky nonsense. As well as in the lands, you could definitely cut down on the Workshop and the Gemstone Caverns and the Lake of the Dead and Volrath Stronghold if you're looking to save a little money. But if you're fine with proxying, those cards are all very, very powerful. hopefully everybody enjoyed today's deck tech. I put a lot of thought into making this list, and I really wanted to try to make it just the right amount of disgusting. Before we go and end here, though, I figure we could do a couple test mulligans, for example. So let's go ahead and deal another hand, and let's pretend this is our first mull in a game. Honestly, this is not bad. We only have one black source, but I'm really inclined to keep this, for example, because we can go Ancient Tomb. Oh, sorry, turn 1, draw 2 again. Cool. Turn 1, Ancient Tomb, lose 2, Ichor Wellspring, draw a card. Go to our next turn. We can go... I don't think we need to worry about putting a black pip in play. And low-key, I think this would be a really good play here, and we're probably up on permanence than everyone else, because it's unlikely anyone else made a turn 1 play with the Ichor Wellspring. So what I think we do is we play Urza's Saga, and then I think we tap for 3 and play the Static Orb. Now, theoretically, this would slow us down too, but because we're up on permanence here and we have a land that taps for 2, if we leave these 2 tapped, we can play out a Swamp. Actually, no, I think it would have been incorrect to play the Static Orb there, because this is a good example of where you kind of hose yourself too early, because now it's going to end up actually being like turn 4 or 5 before we meaningfully do anything. Whereas if we had not Static Orbs last turn, for example, we could just play this out, then we could potentially go into the Oppo for value, or we could make a Construct end of turn and then follow that up on turn 4 with a Braids, which I think might be better instead of slowing everyone down. Let's look at another hand real quick here. Okay, this one's really good too, and honestly, I think better than the last one. It's a more responsible keep. We're probably going to go turn 1, and I think this is worth, but it's a little greedy. We're going to go turn 1 Dark Ret, and then we're going to use 2 for Felwar Stone, and we're going to use the 3rd for Mana Vault. Because then if... Oh, I also forgot to draw. So we would have Malakir Rebirth. We go into turn 2, now we can just windmill slam our Braids. And theoretically, we can leave up a... If one of our opponents has the ability to tap for black, we can leave up the Malakir Rebirth to protect the Braids on turn 2, which is really good. Let's look at one more hand here. Man, this hand's kind of gas too. The problem is our only card for Chromox is Malakir Rebirth, but I think it's worth. The other problem is we have to hope that we draw a Swamp or that one of our opponents can tap for black, because otherwise this hand's really good. I think we would go... It's risk it and keep, hypothetically. We draw Nykthos, get a little punished. We go Ancient Tomb, Felwar Stone. If we didn't go first, we can tap the Felwar Stone for Mana Vault. Then we can play out the Chrome Mox. We exile the Malakir Rebirth. We've got 4 mana up. We theoretically could ram out the Jet Medallion here, tapping the Mana Vault. But if we do that, and I guess if we don't draw Black Source, we can't cast Braids anyway, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, so we'll jam out the Jet Medallion here, and we have a colorless floating, or do nothing with it. We'll go to next turn. Mana Vault will stay tapped. We didn't get punished and drew a Dark Rit to cast the Braids here, so that's pretty good. We'll tap Chrome Mox going into Dark Rit. Because the Jet Medallion costs 1 less, play the turn 2 Braids. That's kind of nuts. And because I have so many permanents in play already, I think I'm going to start by sacking this next turn. Oh, and then the Smokestack top deck, we're just going to windmill slam this and try to choke our opponents out of the game on turn 4. So, overall, I think this deck's got a lot of potential, but I mentioned it in the first hand. The biggest drawback to this deck is going to be able to tell when you should and should not be playing these Stax pieces, because you don't want to accidentally Stax yourself, and that's going to be the hardest thing to think about while you're kind of piloting. But hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, you'll stop by it next week. Once again, I'm Wyatt, and thanks for watching. This is Wintuition MTG.